Has your makeup ever just looked off and you're not really sure why? There's this new concept that's gone completely viral, which is makeup contrast or understanding your own contrast level and then tailoring your makeup to that contrast level. So there are three different contrast levels: low, medium, and high. And I'm just wondering, is this actually as big of a factor as people are making it out to be, to make your entire makeup look more cohesive? Or is it just, another viral trend? Well, I've been learning a lot about it, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to find your own personal contrast level, how contrast plays a role in our makeup looks and in our routine, and then how to harmonize your makeup with that contrast level. And then answering the big question, is this something that we need to pay attention to, really? So, what is makeup contrast? I mean, the idea of makeup contrast is not very far from the contrast that we already know and love, which is basically, that juxtaposition between the light and the darkness, the black and the whites. My mind personally always goes back to photography. In high school, I did a lot of film photography. Maybe I'll throw up a picture for you guys just so you guys see. I loved shooting in black and white, and a really low contrast photo was always like super dreamy and ethereal. Maybe I'll also throw up one, like why not? Side note, I thought these pictures were like so cool in high school. But when we're talking about makeup, we're essentially talking about the difference between your skin tone and your different features, like your hair, your eyebrows, your eyelashes, even the whites of your eyes. So to give you like a very quick example of contrast, I'm going to show you guys a picture of me. Now, spoiler alert, I am medium contrast. So the middle photo is just the regular contrast of the picture. But you can see I also added in a higher contrast version of the picture and a lower contrast version. A higher contrast means that my skin is a little bit brighter and my hair is a little bit darker, which again, just means that things stand out more. And in the lower contrast picture, you can see that everything kind of melds in together a little bit more. And there's less of a difference between like my hair, my skin, my eyebrows. That obviously means that there's less contrast there. I also like to think of it in the way of, does everything kind of look the same weight, the same color? Or are there certain areas of the face that have a little bit more dominance? That's a very general kind of way to look at it. But yeah, for our purposes, I think it's really key to focus on the hair, the eyes, the amount of pigment, even so, in your lips. And I think eyelashes is often something that people overlook a lot, especially in the age of eyelash extensions and like things like brown mascara. Let's talk about three contrast levels and then how to find yours. So first we have low contrast. Like I said before, your skin tone, your hair, and your eye color are all within a similar range. The most common example of this would be someone with light skin, light hair, light eyes. Everything is kind of meshed and melded. But that is what I did want to mention, that if you've ever had a heavier black like lash lift or lash extension and you do have a lower contrast and you just can't figure out why it's felt a little bit heavy to you, that could potentially be why. Now with medium contrast, I feel like medium contrast can kind of be more difficult. You have some variation there, but everything feels a little bit balanced within that variation. So it could be that you have more of like a medium skin tone with a medium dark brown hair, but maybe like hazel eyes, slightly more pigmented lips. Or we could talk about me for a second because I think that my example is kind of interesting. My hair is like this lighter auburn shade. I always look a little bit more contrasted whenever I'm on camera because I have this very dark, deep green background and like these bright lights. But I have these elements of contrast to my face in the brows. My brows are darker than my like lighter auburn hair. My eyes are this like green shade, but it's not a really bright green. It's not a very deep green either. A big telltale sign, and we'll talk about this later when I do my three makeup looks for you: low contrast, medium contrast, and high contrast. But something that I always realized whenever I was doing my makeup is that nude, like nudes, a very light nude, or even a lip color that like truly matches the skin tone of my lips, often really, really washes me out. And I do think that that element of finding out that I am more medium contrast has been like, it's really been enlightening and it makes sense. A lot of the issues I've had in the past with my makeup that I've just learned to navigate, understanding my contrast has kind of been the missing piece. So if it's not already clear, I actually think that contrast in makeup is definitely something to have on your radar and has been really interesting for me to learn about. So folks with more high contrast, let's talk about you. That would be like someone with jet black hair, very pale skin, super bright blue eyes. And I think a lot of people end up becoming more high contrast too. And there is a little bit of variance in here, especially if, like, for example, you're a natural blonde, but you dye your hair black. That is really going to affect like the contrast levels of your face. But I do think that high contrast levels are the easiest to pick out. And really, when you have high contrast, you can kind of pull off a lot of different makeup. Your face can just hold more makeup because you have so much contrast already. The added contrast that you add feels balanced with everything else. And we'll get more into that when I show you the actual tutorial. But I also want to go ahead and say for the first time in this video, one of many times, that this is not a prescription, but I do think it's a nice tool and it's something to be aware of. But ultimately, we should just be applying makeup the way we want to and what makes us feel our best. And I think that you guys already know that too. So let's talk about some quick tests as well that you can do to define your contrast. I talked about this when talking about undertone, but having a photo with a friend, especially with a different amount of contrast to them, can be really revealing. So I'm going to show you guys this picture of me and my sister. You can see I definitely have more contrast with her, even in this like photo booth picture. All of her features kind of blend into each other, whereas I have a little bit more black to my features. But I think sometimes taking away color can be a little bit easier to navigate contrast, at least for me. So go ahead and like take a selfie in natural light, put it in black and white, and start to notice what features of your face have the most contrast. Are you noticing a lot, a little? Also, as I mentioned, this idea of contrast has really blown up over on TikTok. And one of the creators that really has kind of spearheaded this movement is a makeup artist by the name of Elinor, and she has just done an incredible job at this filter on TikTok.
First step is knowing your contrast. You don't know what contrast you are? No problem, I have a filter for that. You just have to select your skin tone level. I'm light, of course. And then you try and find your contrast level. You're low, medium or high. Let's try. Am I low? You can compare. Medium or high? High. Actually, I'm a quite perfect match for the medium contrast.
I think it's an absolutely incredible, helpful tool for this. So I'll make sure to leave a link down below, but on TikTok, you can just type in contrast filter and it'll come up. Another quick anecdote I wanted to give you guys is about brows, and we'll talk more about brows when I do my makeup. One of the weird sleeper hit videos on my channel was this video that I posted about an esthetician really over processing my henna and my brows, and I looked like an absolute nutcase. But I will say, if I had dark black hair and like really light blue eyes, I probably would have been able to pull it off a little bit better than I had. That was actually a situation where she had put the henna in my brows and then went to go do something, and then I was just kind of sitting there like, oh no, this is kind of taking a long time. She was kind of finishing up with her, and I grabbed my phone, you know, just sit on my phone for a bit because it had been a while. I was kind of getting a little bit bored, and this is what I saw when I, yeah, when I pulled up my camera. That is what I saw. I immediately was like, oh no, oh no. My brows have always been this kind of point of contention with the contrast within my face because they're naturally darker than my hair. But when I use a brow pencil to add shape to them, I'm almost finding that one that matches my hair color actually kind of adds some balance. We'll talk more about the techniques in the tutorials. So let's go ahead and do that. And we're going to start with low contrast makeup. Low contrast makeup is just very soft and natural fresh makeup. And if you do have more of a low contrast, typically I like to look at it this way. Your face just can't handle as much makeup without it starting to look like makeup. And I don't think that that's ever necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you guys, I have an entire channel about makeup. I love makeup and I love looking like I'm wearing makeup. So I definitely don't want to demonize the look of like having makeup on. I'm more so saying that it's easier for you to start looking like you have makeup on and your makeup looks a little bit more glamorous and apparent. It's just easier for you to get there faster. So a great example of this is I'm medium contrast. We've already talked about that, but my sister is more low contrast and I can wear like a winged eyeliner and a red lip. It doesn't look super, super glamorous. It definitely does not look like effortless, but on her, it just looks like more of a glamorous look. And again, she has more of a soft, low contrast. So with low contrast soft makeup, I would say go in with a foundation that beautifully matches your skin tone and even consider not using a very bright concealer under the eyes. So for example, this is the Armani concealer in 1.5. And I don't know if you guys can tell, it's a pretty close shade match to me. I also have the shade number 2, and the undertones are just a little bit different. I like to take number 2 under my eyes for just a little bit of brightness. But ultimately, you're really just trying to get more of a natural effect. Contrast really starts at the base of your routine because when you put on a like full coverage foundation, that can actually tend to look more apparent on the skin, not even just from a textural aspect. When you're going for more of a soft kind of look, something that has more coverage can tend to just look not quite as soft. And by the way, I'm using this BK Trio today. I'm really excited that they're coming out with this. This is the 109. I love using this for like cream products, but also just like applying it concealer or foundation. And I'm going to take the concealer brush in this set. So again, this is not an overly bright under eye. We're not trying to do a really heavy underpainting or anything like that. Now for the base, as far as like bronzer and blush, it's really nice to keep it pretty soft. But in my opinion, softness doesn't necessarily just come from pigment, like, you know, wearing only sheer bronzers, only sheer blushes. Softness is also in the kind of way that you apply the product. And it's also about where you're applying the product. So for bronzer, I'm just going to take my Makeup by Mario Light Bronzer. This is obviously very well loved. And I'm actually just going to take my fluffier It Cosmetics brush and I'm going to personally apply it in the softest way, which I think is kind of like this very diffused way. It's about less harsh kind of lines. We're still getting a nice bronze. And something else that I think is really nice about soft contrast is that I think these folks often do so well with a monochromatic look. Like you could apply this bronzer all over the eyes, all over the cheek, sweep it over the nose. And because it's all so soft, you pull off fresh makeup so easily. Whereas for me, sometimes I feel like I look a little bit underdone. But I mean, at the end of the day, if it hasn't been clear already, I think you should just do what makes you feel great. But when I see my sister with like a no makeup look, I honestly feel like there is not a more beautiful woman in the entire world. Before we get into blush, I want to first talk about the eyebrows. What I'm gonna do is kind of make them a little bit less contrasted by using a lighter tinted brow gel. This is actually quite a popular trend to do in Korea, and I've had multiple different makeup artists and estheticians do my brows to match my hair more, and some like to go with my natural color. For me personally, I just like to go with my natural color. I've also played around with, you know, making them a little bit lighter and adding some warmth to them. And if I was going to do a no contrast makeup look, that is probably what I would do. So you can see when I add this gel in, it's adding both shape, but it's also softening them a little bit. And it's also adding some warmth, which does it does bring a little bit more cohesion to my face. But do you see how now that there's less contrast between my hair and my eyebrows, how everything looks less contrasted overall? So let's finish up the cheeks. For like blushes, muted tones will very naturally look amazing on more low contrast faces. I did talk about muted blushes recently as like one of my favorite fall makeup trends. So if you do have a low contrast, like this trend was made for you. So this is Seashells from Buxom, and it's one of my favorite muted blushes that I've ever owned. It is so beautiful on the cheeks. It just gives you this very ethereal look and it lasts forever, which is amazing. So again, you see how soft everything looks. Not one aspect is really fighting for a lot of attention within the makeup look. Like obviously, like I have features that I can't necessarily cover up. Like I don't have a not wearing a bald cap today. Idea here is that none of your features are really fighting for attention, and there's not a huge difference between them as far as those contrast levels. Now, the one aspect of this makeup I'm really excited to talk about throughout all of the makeup looks, honestly, is the eyes. For this look, I'm going to use my Beyond Beige palette from Surratt. We're going to take this beige right up here. It's going to add definition. It'll add a really nice shape, but we're not going for anything too dramatic. And because these textures are so blendable and they just really honestly like look like skin on the eyes, it's pretty incredible. It makes it very conducive to like a soft makeup look. You can even take it under the eyes a little bit, or on the lash line, I should say. And then we're kind of just, we're putting that everywhere. Really, really beautiful soft definition. And then you can even take a soft shimmer on the eyes. If you love a soft glitter, just wash over the eyes with mascara. You have a low contrast, like you are a lucky duck. Because it's always just going to very easily go with your features. And again, another favorite part of low contrast makeup is that you barely need mascara. I was also talking to my sister and she has these beautiful eyelashes. But when she wears black mascara, it's almost like too harsh on her eyes. Like it's very stark. Even the contrast of a dark mascara can sometimes look more contrasted on a low contrast person. Not always the case, especially if you have darker skin. I would say go with a black mascara, but I would say try skipping mascara or go with a brown. Today, I'm just gonna skip it because I have two other looks that I'm about to do. And for the lips, your Lips But Better shades are always going to win. They really are. Again, if you're using a cheek product like a cream cheek, you're lucky in that it's really going to be very cohesive. Like monochromatic looks with a soft shade look beautiful on low contrast. This shade from Physicians Formula, Pink Paradise, I think goes really, really well with this. And what you can do is you can skip liner if you'd like, if again you want something very, very low contrast and again super effortless. I have super, super soft lip lines though. So I'm just going to take French from Say. I've been loving these lip liners so much. And I'm just adding like just a touch of shape. I think I also just had the most magical idea for a soft contrast makeup look. This lid luster from Surratt in the shade Hadaka. You can see tonally so similar, but it just adds this beautiful ethereal wet glow to the eyes. So soft and like elegant. So you can even add that as that kind of element of definition. I didn't think I could love the look more until I put that on. Just like the most perfect glossy lid that isn't like overly glossy. Just looks like skin, like really fresh skin. But there are like other shades that could better match your skin tone if you have more of a cool deep skin tone, or even obviously, you know, we'll get into medium and high contrast. This would probably work better for those. But if you do have more of a medium to deep skin tone with a soft contrast, something like this could look really pretty as well. And this is the completed low contrast makeup look. You know, like I mentioned, I have medium contrast, so I do like a little bit more than this, or I feel like a little bit more does make me feel more put together. But I'm telling you, if you have low contrast, please try this makeup and let me know what you think, because I think it's just like, it's absolutely beautiful. In general, if you have more low contrast, I would love to hear your feedback on like the last time you've done like kind of your no makeup look, or your more like light ethereal makeup, and let me know what you thought. Obviously, this goes without saying, I've said it a million times, but what makes everyone feel their best is what matters. I can see some low contrast people looking absolutely divine in this makeup. Okay, so now let's get into medium contrast makeup, which is me. Now, my favorite makeup look, sorry to be biased, but I think it's the best makeup for me, is medium contrast makeup. So I'm first going to start off with more of a medium coverage base, and I'm going to use the Surratt Dewdrop just because it's what I've been loving. I know I'm using a lot of Surratt products in this video, it's just because I've been loving them. Since I've been learning about contrast in makeup, it really has put together some pieces for me of why I feel the best in this kind of makeup. Like, I have always preferred a medium coverage to a full coverage and a light coverage. I've never really liked a strong smoky eye on me, but like a medium toned brown all over the lid. So again, I'm just swiping this on. The only thing I don't like about this one is I don't really like the dispensing mechanism. I think it's just kind of annoying. But other than that, I just love how thin it is on the skin. It just doesn't want to sit on top of the skin while also being so lightweight and blurring. I'm telling you guys, if you have been interested in the Huda Beauty Easy Blur, I think more people should just try this because this is what I wanted that to be. With medium contrast makeup, I like to go a little bit brighter under the eyes. I don't like to do like a full super bright under eye. And for that, I'm just going to use my Old Faithful, which is 1.5C from Kosas. I think the tone is nice and brightening without being overly light for me. And that's, again, that's, you know, what I'm going for. On an everyday basis, I'm not going to use a concealer to brighten like the bridge of the nose and on the forehead and on the chin. I just want a little bit of brightness around the eyes, and then I'm good with that. And I do like to take the excess like around the nose or like any areas where my coverage kind of dissipates first. Again, not sponsored, just I've been using this one the most. The Surratt Artistique bronzer is kind of a holy grail now for me. And the difference I think between medium contrast bronzing versus low contrast bronzing, in my opinion, is that low contrast bronzing, you can be a little bit more soft with it. You can use a larger brush, using it in sweeping motions, I think looks very natural. Whereas with more medium contrast, I like to kind of match the contrast of the rest of my features. So I'm going, you can see, we can definitely see the bronze and the shape that this is adding to the face, but it's not overly sculpted. And part of that is just because this formula is really like blendable and almost performs like a cream on the face, but it's a powder. But you can see when I turn my cheek, we have shape, but it's not like a full contoured, bronzed, high impact, high contrast look. It's something kind of in the middle. And I'm being a little bit more strategic with placement as well, because if I take bronzer like all over the entire face, I can start to look a little bit flat. Whereas when I take it onto the cheeks like this, you know, do any of the necessary shaping I want to do, I think it looks a little bit more cohesive for me. And by the way, like this makeup look has been my go-to. Like I'm literally showing you guys what I've been wearing all of the time. I'm gonna brush my brows up a little bit. We will get to brows in a second, but it's something I think that a lot of you guys know about me is I do not stray from blush. I really like blush. And oftentimes I like to go with a blush, like an impactful blush, rather than a really impactful eye or a really impactful lip. With my skin, Toasted Teddy has been kind of game changing for me. I cannot get enough of this shade from Rhode. And you can see, for me, it's like the perfect intensity. Blends beautifully, by the way, in combination with powder. Like, you don't have to worry about that. I would even be tempted to take something like Merit Rouge a little bit on the apples of the cheeks. For this tutorial, I'm not going to do that, but you know, that's also just what I've been doing. And I'm just really not afraid to build up and start layering in the contrast because it's just ironic that the more makeup I add in this step, the more natural and cohesive everything looks. At least in like my experience, my opinion of the makeup process. It's just been really fun to like play around with. And yeah, I do tend to get a little bit crazy with the blush, but my face can handle a little bit more blush. If this was like all red, then I would definitely be leaning a little bit more into the high contrast realm. But because this is still a more muted tone, I think my face can handle it a little bit more. But as we know, I'm honestly just gonna wear as much blush as I want to anyway. And for the eyes, I'm gonna go back into the Gone Greige palette that I was using before. And can you guys guess what tone is going to look the best? It's this shade right here. And it is also ironically like my favorite shade in the palette. And basically apply it all over the lid. And I'm turning this into basically like a kind of like a one and done look with an eyeshadow, and the contrast is more mid-toned. I also love it because I really like that shade for my eyes. I think it really pops my green eyes. Something I have talked about before, and this isn't directly related to contrast, but also kind of in the same realm. I don't know if you guys have noticed this as I've been applying my makeup. I never take a lot of color on the inner corners of my eyes just because I have more deep set hollow under eyes. And I find that it can kind of close off my eyes when I do that. I've done a few videos on it, but if you guys are interested and you want to hear more, definitely make sure you're subscribed because I'm planning on doing another video about some other techniques I've been doing. And if you've just been like piling on concealer and you can't figure out why nothing's covering it, you could have hollow under eyes. Because of my color season, I tend to love like terracotta shades. I think they look really nice on me. That's partially the reason I went with Toasted Teddy today for the blush. But now I'm driving myself crazy because I cannot find my eyeliner brush anywhere. And I found it, so I am like the happiest camper now. I'm just taking this deepest shade and adding a soft defined wing. Now, if I had more high contrast, I'd probably do a black, but this is a dark brown. I almost always do dark brown for a wing liner. Let me zoom you guys in a little bit. I think it just looks a little bit softer. And the nice thing about having medium contrast is you just have a little bit more flexibility in general. So I'm just doing a small baby wing. And you guys know, like, this is my signature. This is what I always do. And what's nice in particular about a soft, like, dark wing like this is it's not the full commitment to, like, a black, dark liquid liner, which again, on me can just look a little bit harsher sometimes. Just to kind of up the contrast a little bit, I'm going to take a little bit of my beloved Space Cowboy and put that right in the middle of the eye. And you can see because we have that contrast between the glitter in the middle of the eye versus the rest, it adds like its own kind of intensity. And honestly, I just love, I mean, you guys know I love a wet glitter. So now let's do some mascara. And you know what? I do really like a brown mascara too, especially if I want kind of like an all brown look. I think it just looks really pretty. And I do like to go for a black mascara, probably like 7 times out of 10. And I'm going to use the L'Oreal Panorama. I have already mentioned this a couple of times on my channel, but I just really, really like it. It's really good at defining the lashes and giving me good lift. And I just love the way it frames the eyes. So I really like more of a lifted look with my mascara, and this one does a really good job of it. This kind of lash look I think looks really nice in the middle. You could amp it up, you could amp it down. But just keep in mind if you're applying fake lashes or you do lash extensions, just keep in mind that that will be a contrast point, so you could decide to balance it if you'd like. Again, all of this is optional. So those are the lashes done, and now we gotta get into brows. I'm not immune to going overboard with my brows sometimes. My brows are darker than my natural hair color, and they're a little bit thicker. When they're too dark, it starts to take away from the rest of my features, but when they're too light, I feel like something's missing. So what I've been doing recently is I take my brow gel and I swipe the gel through and kind of set them into a general area I want them to be. I go back in and fill in only the areas where I think like actually need the color. And doing this, reversing, like adding the gel first, letting it set, then going into adding the product has really helped me be able to tell where I actually need the product. Now, you're definitely going to need a gel that's a little bit flexible and wants to work with you. This one is really good and it's affordable. It's from Romand. And while we're doing that, let's talk about the lips. The lips I'm like so excited for, because I feel like with a medium contrast, you kind of get the best of both worlds. You can go for a really nice nude lip or something with more intensity more readily. But I will say that anyone can really play around with lip color if you just use a darker lip liner, or you can also add a little bit of concealer to the middle of the lips to potentially lighten up a color. So there's definitely ways around this to like balance the contrast. Honestly, today I want to try this Kaja Juicy Lip Oil. I tried another shade and it was gorgeous. So typically what I'll do is line the lips, and I do like to kind of, you know, blot out that line a little bit just so it looks a little bit more natural. Having a really crisp lip line is an element of contrast, you know, just the same way like a really crisp winged liner is an element of contrast. That like angularity kind of adds to that element. Another shade of the Say lip liners, but this one is Twist. This one's my favorite. You can see it's maybe like a shade and a half darker than my lips. Honestly, whenever I wear a true nude, I've always wondered why I like look not good. And it's because of this. And like I said, I love thinking of contrast as another piece in my toolbox of makeup techniques, not like the end all be all. It has answered a lot of questions for me, especially when it comes to my lip color and my brows. And now I'm going to take the Kaja and Plum Paloma and add that on top. Oh my gosh. I don't even know what that smells like, but it smells amazing. Next, I'm going to go into the brows. I can still feel they're a touch tacky, which is what we want. And shade is really important here. So the first shade we could go with is Soft Brown from Kosas. And again, that is a soft brown. I almost never do black, even though my brows are quite dark. And then we also have the Rare Beauty and Cool Brown. So cool brown, soft brown, and I think soft brown is what I'm gonna go with from Kosas. And I'm just very softly filling in. Might have let the brow gel sit for a touch too long, but we'll be fine. And this brow really doesn't need much of anything. A little bit in the front. And you can really soften the way you fill in your brows as well by trying to not have a ton of product right here, because that will look a little bit more noticeable. What I also think is really key here is taking like a step back and then looking at the harmony of everything and the balance. So I think that this looks very balanced. I could honestly probably handle even like a little bit more blush or a touch more color on the lips, but I don't think we necessarily need to. And this is the medium contrast makeup. I absolutely love this one. Again, I'll make sure to leave all the products that I used down below for you guys. But now let's go ahead and dive into high contrast makeup. And now we're back for high contrast makeup. I already have my medium contrast makeup on, and I'm just going to add some tweaks to make it a more high contrast look. If you do have more of a high contrast, your face can hold a decent amount of coverage without it looking like a lot of coverage, at least more than someone with a light contrast. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a little bit of the Tarte Creamy Shape Tape. Very important because I don't like the original. I only like the creamy version. And I'm gonna show you guys how adding some brightness under the eyes really takes this makeup look to a higher contrast level. You can see already everything looks a little bit more glam. So I'm just gonna go ahead and swipe this on, and we'll also obviously add like blend out some of these other areas too. We're not just gonna keep them like that. And by the way, we're already starting off with a medium coverage, which I don't think you need to wear full coverage just because you have a high contrast makeup look. I mean, the rules are meant to be played around with, but I do think that you can handle more of a bright under eye and like a brightened kind of T-zone when you have more high contrast for sure. And what I would do now is go ahead and make sure that I'm getting the shape that I want with my bronzer. So I'm gonna add a couple drops of this Bronze and Protect from CL. I've just been really, really loving it. And just tapping that in. And you can see we're starting to really get that shape back. And because this bronzer shade as well isn't strictly warm, we're also getting this kind of like sculpted, more angular kind of look that I do think more high contrast folks can pull off more readily. Like if you have a higher contrast, you can pull off contouring a lot easier than someone with a low contrast. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it if you have low contrast though. Definitely. And now I'm gonna take a little bit more of that and contour my nose a little bit. This is the concealer brush, by the way, from BK. Also really good at contouring. And I am going to blend this out more, but I'm just trying to get a decent kind of shape out. And then I'll just blend these edges. Now we talked about the eyes, and when you have high contrast, you definitely don't need to be afraid to play up your eyes. I mean, there are so many high contrast people with like those deep, dark, smoky eyes where it just feels like it was made for them. And I've always been like so envious. Not that that means I'm not going to do them, but one way to add some intensity is, again, instead of going with this powder wing that's a little bit softer, you can go in with a black liner. It's definitely going to add more contrast. This is the one from Surat. And just go ahead and add more of an intense line. Do you see how already the contrast is like just amplified a little bit? But it makes like, it really does like make a huge difference though. See that? Like that really pops. And as you can see, even with the amount of mascara that I have now with that wing, it looks a little bit off balance because this is so much less contrast versus the eyeshadow than that liner is. So I do want to balance that out by adding some of this Lancome Hypnose Drama. This is their new one, and it brings the drama. That is for sure. And it is rich black. But do you see how that looks more cohesive already? Because the black shade in and of itself is more cohesive with the liner. The element of contrast goes so much further than just you have low contrast, medium contrast, or high contrast. It's a concept that actually really plays into the way that your makeup looks turn out. So again, I think the eyes are definitely giving high contrast here, even though we didn't do like a full-on smoky eye. And what I'm gonna do now is take this Nabla Beyond Blurry lipstick in Aphrodite. And you can see we're not even going super deep comparatively to the color we already had. But the impact overall is a lot higher contrast. What you can also do is I literally was like blotting my lips. You can take that excess and even intensify the cheeks a bit. You can really handle, your face just can handle more makeup. And for me right now, this is looking pretty glam. Because I have more of a medium contrast, it doesn't look like super, super glam. If I had more of a low contrast, this would probably look a little bit more intense. And again, intensity isn't a bad thing. It's just like something to note. I actually love the way this looks on the cheeks. And then a really nice finishing touch to add contrast to any makeup look is to go in with a beige pencil. This has like always been my little trick. You can add it to the inner corner, which is my favorite, because I don't like sparkle in the inner corner for me with my deep set eyes. Immediately adds like an interest of, whoa, like overall contrast, especially in comparison to the outer corner of the eye that has so much black pigment there. Also use this to like clean up your eyeliner lines if you'd like, or add that extra element of contrast on the outside of the wing. Use it to highlight the nose, which we already kind of did that. Highlight the brows a little bit. And I didn't do any more pigment in the brows just because I feel like my brows didn't really need it. And also, like, I feel like that blended like crap. You guys kind of get the idea. When you do a strong highlight next to something that isn't highlighted, it immediately adds an element of contrast. And this is my high contrast makeup. And again, I think I can totally pull this one off, especially because of my brows, because my brows are such like that wild card feature for me. Even though I do think I align more with medium contrast, I do think that they kind of help me a bit, at least when it comes to the eyes. I think going for more vibrant shades with more pigment are really key when it comes to leaning into your high contrast. So something really light and muted, something like Piggy from Rhode, for example, I think just might not give you the vibrance that your face can handle. Whereas I think, again, something with a little bit more richness really pops. And overall, I definitely think that this TikTok trend is onto something. It's onto something that's really important within our makeup looks. And I'm definitely going to make sure to leave Eleanor's handle down below to TikTok because I think she did such a good job with that filter. I'll leave all the products I talked about down below. If you guys have any questions, definitely leave them down below. I'm here to help. And if you'd like to see, any follow-up videos, I'm also happy to do that. And if you did find the video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up so that I know and that other people can find the video. But overall, thank you guys so much for being here, and I will see you in my next one.